Alright, so here's the thing about the Galaxy S26 Ultra. After spending a full month with this phone, not just testing it for a week and moving on, but actually using it as my main device from living with it to pushing it in real world situations, I keep coming back to one word: refinement. And I know, refinement doesn't sound exciting whatsoever. It doesn't make for clickbait headlines and it doesn't generate hype on social media. But it's the most honest way to describe what Samsung did this year. Because the S26 Ultra isn't a revolutionary phone, and it's not a dramatic leap that makes last year's model feel instantly outdated. But what it is Samsung taking everything that they've learned over the past few years of making Ultra phones and tightening it, polishing it, and refining it until every rough edge is smoothed out. They didn't try to win spec wars with absurd numbers that look good on paper but don't translate in real use. And I would say that they took a nice gamble on a feature that actually can work very well. They just made the Ultra better in subtle ways and in ways that you feel after a month of daily use rather than what you notice within the first week. And the question that we're answering today is whether that's enough, whether refinement at $1,300 justifies the price, whether small improvements across the board matter more than one big flashy feature. Because here's the reality: if you're looking at this phone expecting to be blown away by something revolutionary, you're going to be very impressed with the new features within the first week, but overall you're going to get over them and you're going to use it like the average phone. But if you're looking for the most complete, the most balanced, most refined Ultra that Samsung has ever made, and something that you can use for long term, this might be exactly what you're looking for. So after a month of extensive use, filming with it, gaming with it, editing on it, carrying it everywhere, actually living with this phone the way that you would if you bought it, I'm going to tell you the complete truth about what this phone is, who it's for, and whether it's worth your money. Now again, let me be completely clear before we do start. I actually like this phone. But after a month, I like the fact that I can see what went wrong, what went right, and give you guys the option to determine whether these are make or break problems, if you were looking for this type of phone. And also because every device makes compromises somewhere. Even the most expensive phones, most premium phones on the market have things that bother you after you live with them for a month. And the Galaxy S26 Ultra is no exception. Before we keep going with the video, I want to show you guys the case that I've been using on my Galaxy S26 Ultra recently. Now this is the Pitaka Edge case, and it's honestly one of the cleanest minimalist cases that I've tried in a very long time. And what makes it different is the material. Instead of plastic or silicone, this case is made from aramid fiber, the same type of material used in things like aerospace components and body armor. So it's incredibly strong, but also ridiculously thin and lightweight. In fact, the case is a little over 1mm thick, which means that when you put it on a phone, it still feels like you're holding the S26 Ultra without a case at all. And if you look closely on the back, the patterns that you're seeing isn't printed. It's actually woven directly into the aramid fiber, so the design won't fade or wear off over time. And one of the coolest things about this case is something that Pitaka calls the errand button, and it basically adds an extra shortcut to your phone. You can set it to launch the camera, open an app, turn on the flashlight, which is actually very useful once you start using it. The case also has built-in magnets, so it works with magnetic chargers, mounts, and accessories, even though this is an Android phone. So if you like cases that keep your phone thin, lightweight, and premium feeling, this is definitely one to check out. And the first problem that I do want to talk about is the privacy display. Now, look, I know this was Samsung's big flex this year. One of the headline features that they're pushing in every ad, every presentation, and every piece of marketing. On paper, and when you first use this phone, I do understand the appeal. If you're sitting on a plane next to someone, or if you're in a coffee shop working on sensitive documents, or even if you're at your office where coworkers walk by constantly, having a display that can narrow the viewing angle and make your screen unreadable from the sides sounds genuinely useful. But here's the problem, the big unavoidable problem that I noticed within the first week of using this phone. The privacy screen doesn't just affect privacy when you turn it on, it also affects the display itself all the time. And I'm not talking about, oh, maybe if you stare down at it from a weird angle in specific lighting conditions that you might notice something subtle. I mean that it genuinely hurts the screen quality in normal everyday use that you experience constantly. It makes the display feel less bright than it should be, less clean and crisp than previous Ultra models, and worst of all, colors slightly look off. Not dramatically wrong, not like the display is broken, but just slightly less accurate, slightly less vibrant, and slightly less Samsung. And if you've used the Galaxy S25 Ultra and then you pick up the S26 Ultra, you'll see it immediately. The S25 Ultra screen looks more bright, more vivid, more confident, and more like what you expect from a Samsung display. Because Samsung is usually the company that wins the display game every single year. You know, that's their thing and that's what they're known for. Best displays in the industry, no competition, end of discussion. So the fact that I'm sitting here telling you that the previous model has a superior display quality, that I'd rather have last year's screen than this year's screen, that's not a small complaint. That's a fundamental issue with one of the phone's most important features. And this is the screen that you're staring at for hours every single day. But this is new technology and I'm pretty sure that Samsung will fix it in the next phone. And it's funny because that can always be a problem when it comes to new features. Like the first phone that adopts a feature is usually kind of the test dummy, and then the next one refines that feature even better so that it's perfectly integrated with the phone. But all right, the next issue is the S Pen. Now, Samsung changed its shape this year, and I'll give them credit. When you're actually holding it or using it to draw or write, it does feel nice. The shape is comfortable, the grip is good, no complaints there. But here's the problem. The fit. Because now if you insert the S Pen incorrectly, if you're not paying attention and you slide it in at the wrong angle, or if you're in a hurry and you just jam it in without thinking, it doesn't sit flush with the body of the phone. It can actually stick out visibly, not by a lot, but enough to where you can see it and feel it. And look, most people will figure out how to insert it properly after the first few times. It's not rocket science, but that's not the point. The point is that a built-in tool like the S Pen, something that's supposed to be convenient, something that's a major selling point of the Ultra line, should feel completely effortless. It should be impossible to insert it wrong. The design should guide it into place automatically so that you should never have to think about it. And now it feels like you need to be careful. You need to pay attention and you need to make sure that it's aligned before you push it in. And for a phone this expensive, for a feature that's this important to the Ultra's identity, that extra friction is not really my vibe. Now, all right. Another problem that I have, and this one might be more controversial, is the aluminum frame. Now, I get the arguments. I understand the reasoning. Aluminum conducts heat better, which does help with thermal management. It's lighter, it's easier to manufacture at scale, and there are legitimate engineering reasons for this choice. But here's my issue. Aluminum is softer than titanium, and that's just physics. And that matters specifically for one scenario. Corner drops. Now, if this phone hits the ground corner first, which is one of the most common ways that a phone can get damaged in real life, aluminum is more likely to dent, deform, and leave a visible scar than titanium would be. And don't get me wrong, titanium isn't invincible. It can still be damaged, but it's tougher in that specific impact scenario. It holds its shape better, it resists deformation better, and because the Ultra is a big, heavy phone, pretty much substantial in every dimension, corner drops are realistic. All it takes is one moment where it slides off of a table and lands at the wrong angle, or you pull it out of your pocket and it slips from your hand, or if it tips off the edge of a corner. One unlucky drop and suddenly you have a $1,300 phone with a nasty corner dent that you're going to see and feel every time you pick it up for the next 3 years. And also, I've already seen people defending the aluminum choice by saying that Samsung removed titanium because of overheating issues. And I want to address that argument directly because I don't think it fully makes sense. Now, here's the thing. Samsung never really had major overheating problems with titanium on the S25 Ultra. That was not a phone that was known for getting uncomfortably hot or thermal throttling aggressively or causing widespread complaints about heat management. Of course, it ran warm under heavy load, just like any other flagship, but it wasn't a problem that needed solving urgently. Could aluminum help with heat dissipation? Absolutely. But here's where it doesn't make sense to me. If you wanted better thermals, why not keep titanium and improve the cooling system anyway? Because Samsung did improve the cooling system. They increased the vapor chamber size significantly, and that alone can handle thermal improvement needed for the new chip. So it just kind of feels like a weird trade-off. You're sacrificing a premium material that made the phone feel more ultra, made it more durable in specific drop scenarios, and that was part of the marketing appeal, just to chase a cooling advantage that wasn't desperately needed based on last year's performance. And I'm sorry for the mini rant, but it just feels like the S26 Ultra lost a premium material that contributed to durability and perceived value, and the reason for losing it doesn't feel compelling enough to justify the trade-off. But alright, let's talk about the part that you feel every single day. The physical hardware, the design, the build, and the materials. Now let's talk about the glass, because this is where durability really matters in daily use. Now on the front, you're getting Corning Gorilla Glass Armor 2, which Samsung is marketing as their toughest front glass yet. Gorilla Glass Armor 2 is specifically designed to resist micro scratches from keys, coins, sand, all the stuff that ends up in your pocket alongside your phone, and better distribute the force from drops across a wider area instead of just concentrating impact. And not only did Samsung put this energy on the front, but they also put it on the back. You're getting Gorilla Glass Victus 2, which is already a well-established and proven for improved drop performance. I had it on my Galaxy S25 Ultra, and just like that phone, this phone is very, very durable and complete dust sealing, so no dust or debris gets into the internal components. Basically, if you're in the rain, you get accidental spills, or you drop it in a sink or toilet, your phone will be fine. Now in terms of weight and height, which matters when the phone is in your hand, the S26 Ultra weighs 214 grams. It's 6.9 inches of screen, it's tall, it's wide, and it's substantial in every dimension. And after a full month of carrying this phone everywhere, using it as my daily driver, I can tell you with complete certainty that you absolutely feel it. If you're coming from a smaller phone, anything in the 170 to 180 gram range, anything with a 6.3 inch or smaller screen, you will feel like you just upgraded from a phone to a tablet that happens to make calls. So again, you have that massive 6.9 inch display that gives you more screen real estate for productivity, for media consumption, for multitasking. And the 214 gram weight includes a 5000 milliamp hour battery that lasts all day under heavy use. It feels serious, purpose-built, and unapologetic about what it is. Alright, let's talk about the part of the phone that you're staring at for hours every single day. The display. And again, here's a part where the story gets complicated, because the S26 Ultra's display is simultaneously one of the best panels on any smartphone right now, while also still being compromised by a feature that affects overall quality in ways that Samsung probably didn't anticipate. Now on the S26 Ultra, you're getting a 6.9 inch dynamic AMOLED 2X panel with LTPO technology, which means that the refresh rate can dynamically adjust between 1 and 120 Hz. So if you're scrolling on Instagram or Twitter, 120 for buttery smooth motion, watching a static image, or you're looking at a photo, drops down to lower refresh rates. And this feature is mostly beneficial for battery efficiency. The display can use high refresh rates when they're actually necessary and beneficial, and the rest of that time is conserving power by refreshing less frequently. Basically an intelligent adaptation that helps you preserve battery life without you having to manually choose between smooth and long lasting. And after a full month of using this display constantly, it still remains one of the smoothest, most responsive panels in the entire smartphone industry. No stutters during scrolling, no weird brightness jumps while moving between apps, no random refresh hiccups that make animations feel janky. It just works consistently and exactly how you'd expect a flagship display to work. Samsung also claims up to 2600 nits of peak brightness for HDR content and bright outdoor conditions, and I actually tested this extensively throughout the month. Not just glancing at it outside once and calling it good, but deliberately using it in harsh conditions to see how it performs. Now in direct sunlight, midday, clouds and no clouds, this thing genuinely cuts through bright lights better than most phones that I've used this year. Now brightness alone doesn't always translate perfectly to real world visibility. You can have a phone with crazy high peak brightness that still looks washed out in sunlight because of glare and reflections. And that's where the anti-reflective coating becomes critical, because it's not just about how bright your screen can get, it's about how much glare gets eliminated, how much reflection gets reduced, and how visible the actual content remains, fighting against environmental light. And the anti-reflective coating on the S26 Ultra genuinely makes a difference. Even while being handicapped, Samsung is still providing some of the best displays in the game. Now alright, moving on to battery, the S26 Ultra is still rocking a 5000 milliamp hour battery, which at this point is basically the Ultra standard. So the headline this year isn't really the battery itself, the headline is what Samsung did around it. The 3nm chip that's more efficient, the LTPO display that adapts intelligently, and the big upgrade that everyone's been asking for, which is the charging. And in real world use, let me tell you about my experience after a full month. Not a controlled lab test where I watch YouTube on airplane mode with brightness at 50%, but but real daily use the way that you'd actually use this phone if you bought it. Now see, this is what a typical heavy content day looked like for me. I'm filming clips for social media throughout the day, scrolling Twitter and Instagram constantly during downtime, messaging across multiple apps, and some gaming sessions when I did have my minor breaks. Bluetooth connected to wireless earbuds all day, location services always on, auto brightness enabled so the screen was often running bright outdoors, and multiple Galaxy AI tools running in the background, processing photos, and doing on-device tasks. All of it. No battery saving modes enabled, no compromises, or babying the phone to make it last. On average, I'm getting about 6 to 7 hours of on-screen time, depending on how heavy the day was. On lighter days when I wasn't filming or gaming, I hit 8 hours, and on absolutely brutal days where I'm pushing everything hard, I'm still getting close to 6. But what stood out to me was the consistency and predictability. You know that feeling when some phones hit 30% battery and suddenly it feels like it's leaving you soon? Like the phone is telling you, yeah, I'm gonna need a charger in the next hour or you're screwed. And for a phone this size with the screen this big and brightness this high, that consistency was genuinely impressive. And another thing that I like to touch on, which was also very impressive, was how much battery does the phone lose when you're actively not using it. Now the S26 Ultra standby drain has been very excellent throughout my testing. I've left this phone overnight multiple times unplugged, just sitting on my nightstand in standby mode, and it barely moves. I'll wake up after 7 to 8 hours and it's lost maybe 2 to 5%, sometimes even less. And during the day when it's in my pocket and I'm not actively using it for hours, same story. Now, all right. Cameras. This is where the Ultra name has to justify itself. 200 megapixel main camera, 50 megapixel ultra wide, 10 megapixel 3x telephoto, 50 megapixel 5x periscope telephoto, up to 100 times digital zoom, 8K video at 30 frames per second, and 4K video at 120. Also with a 12 megapixel front camera. Those are some very impressive numbers, but specs don't just take photos. Hardware means nothing if processing isn't there to back it up. And I don't want to go even deeper into specs. I want to show you guys results. Now, in daylight performance and good lighting, this camera is exactly what you'd expect from an Ultra flagship. Sharp, detailed, punchy without looking cartoonish. Colors are vibrant with that signature Samsung look. Not hyper realistic like a Pixel, but appealing and social media ready. The 200 megapixel sensor captures an enormous amount of detail. Textures are rendered cleanly. There's no weird softness or over sharpening. Dynamic range is excellent. And you can shoot a scene with a bright sky and dark shadows, and the camera will balance both well without blowing out highlights or crushing blacks. And the thing that impressed me the most was the consistency. You can point this camera at almost any daylight scene, tap the shutter, and get something that you'd be happy to post. No weird exposure misses, no random color shifts, and no moments where the camera completely misreads the scene and gives you something unusable. It just works reliably and predictably. And I would say that when it comes to the ultra wide, during the day, excellent, genuinely useful. At night, it's fine if you need it, but you'll immediately notice the quality drop compared to the main camera. And that's not really unique to Samsung. Almost every phone has a weaker ultra wide and low light, but it is worth knowing so you set your expectations correctly. And moving on to zoom, the 3x telephoto is perfect for portraits. That focal length naturally compresses the image in a flattering way. Faces look better, background separation feels natural, and you get that professional portrait look without relying entirely on software blur to fake depth. I used it constantly for portrait shots where I wanted flattering compression, street photography where I needed tighter framing without getting physically closer, detailed shots of architecture or objects from a comfortable distance, and candid shots where I didn't really want to be right in someone's face. And at 3x, photos are sharp, clean, colors are accurate, and it's genuinely optical zoom with zero quality loss. But alright, after a full month of living with the Galaxy S26 Ultra, using it as my main phone, not babying it, and not testing features in controlled conditions, but actually using it in a way that you would if you spent $1,300 on it, here's the complete honest truth. The Galaxy S26 Ultra is the most refined, most polished, most mature Ultra that Samsung has ever made. And I would say that if I'm rating this phone in isolation as a product, I would give it an 8.5 out of 10. It's excellent, well made, highly capable, and does virtually everything well. And I'm not gonna lie, $1,300 is again a very steep price even when compared to the competition that is also providing really great phones. But as a person who has had the S26 Ultra for a month, I would say that if you were to buy the S26 Ultra, you would not regret it. Peace.